Hey dudes, this is Sarah Partridge, jazz vocalist and Kessler in Risky Business, and you're listening to Tommy Throwback Kovac on Splat from the Past. If you're not easily offended, Tommy will put you to the test.
Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming one of the great bass players of rock and roll, and I am talking about Leland Sklar. Leland Sklar has played with all the greats, from Jackson Browne to James Taylor, to Phil Collins, Linda Ronstadt, Ronnie Blakely, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Rod Stewart, just to name a few. Having him on the show today to talk about his amazing career in music. He has a YouTube channel that he's been doing since quarantine happened. I recommend it. Go check out Leland Sklar on YouTube. Tells great stories about playing with musicians. And it's going to be a great show. Also, I'd like to say, rest in peace, Carl Reiner, one of the greats in comedy. We just lost him last night. And I remember as a kid, me and my best friend Michael, we performed the 2,000-year-old man sketch for our speech therapy class. I shit you not. I was Sid Caesar and Michael was Carl Reiner, and I coached him and showed him, told him what he had to do and everything, and he pulled it off just great. So thank you, Carl Reiner, for the years of laughs. And I'm so lucky I got to interview his granddaughter-in-law, Tracy Reiner, a couple years ago when I first started the show. So, here is my interview with Leland Sklar. Hey, Leland.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Well, I'm fine. I just got back from the veterinarians, took both my dogs in to get anti-itch shots.
Oh.
My day is off and running.
Well, this is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Yes, my pleasure.
So, going back in time, what age did you start gravitating towards music in your childhood?
4.
4?
When I was 4, my parents used to watch the Liberace TV show. Mm-hmm. And I would sit there and watch it, and I became enamored with it, and that's what took me to piano when I was 5, and that's been part of my life ever since.
Wow, that's the early TV years.
Yeah, but he was quite a pioneer and quite a character, and there wouldn't have been an Elton John without Liberace.
Absolutely.
Style and panache and all of that. So I just found it really fascinating beyond just the piano playing. It's just his whole presentation and everything. So that's how I ended up there. And the thing that's very funny is a few years ago, because I'm originally from Milwaukee, and I was inducted into the Wisconsin Musicians Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. And Liberace is also in it because he's from Milwaukee. So he got me into music, and now we're together in the Hall of Fame. So it's a funny little journey.
You still pinching yourself? You still pinching yourself that you're in the same Hall of Fame with Liberace?
Yeah, but I probably pinch myself anyhow just because I enjoy it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
No, it's a funny journey. And it was funny when I started with Phil Collins, and one of the first guys I met was Daryl Sturmer, and I said, "So where are you from?" And he goes, "Milwaukee." And there's a lot of connections to Milwaukee, and Fred White, who sang with us in the '90 tour with Phil Collins, was from Milwaukee. So there's a lot of Wisconsin connections in my life.
Yeah, crazy. Is bass your only instrument, or how many do you have overall? You said piano.
Well, I started on piano, and by the time I was 12, I switched over when I entered junior high school. I ended up, because there was a plethora of piano players, but they needed a string bass player. And the music teacher had an old string bass there, and he pulled it out, and I held it, plucked it, and said, "Sold." I love the feel of it, and the timbre, and the vibration and all that. And I pretty much was done with piano at that point. I was really stressed out with it. So I've never really, I can play a little piano, but for the most part, I'm pretty much just a bass player. I never played guitar or any other instruments.
Who were your musical influences growing up?
Oh, God, lots of them. Because when I started, I was a classical. When I started piano, it was all classical. And then when I started playing bass, it was classical and jazz. So I was listening. I mean, as a kid, like at that age, I really wasn't aware of influences as much as just learning the instrument. But, I would listen to recordings of Ray Browne and Red Callender, and there was, a whole bunch of really great upright players during that period. And but for the most part, I was really just kind of focused on getting my chops, learning the instrument itself rather than emulating a style or anything. So I always found that I'm affected by anybody who ever plays the instrument, from the most, insane, Jocko, Victor Wooten kind of a player down to the most simple rudimentary players. There's something in all of that that you can glean something from. So there's no very specific. I was a huge McCartney fan, and Jack Bruce and John Entwistle. That whole period. But there were a lot of bass players that came out of that ilk that I really admired, from Tim Bogert, from Vanilla Fudge, and Bobby Leidig, who did all the Seals and Crofts stuff, and so lots of different people, lots of different influences.
You remember the first album you ever bought?
The Righteous Brothers, Right Now.
That's a good one.
And when I became friends and later worked with Bill Medley, that's when I was really pinching myself. And my phone rings and it's Lee, hi Lee, it's Brother Bill. It's like, I would kind of go, holy shit, that's Bill Medley. I mean, my God, I used to sit home and practice to that album all the time, learning all those songs. That was probably one of my very first ones. My parents had an extensive record collection, so, I didn't have to go out and look a lot. There was, a lot of good music in the house.
Yeah. You were on the first album I ever bought. Can you guess which one?
It could be anything. It could be anything from One Man Dog to Spectrum.
No Jacket Required.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was a great record to me.
I know it gets a lot of flack, but it is a great record.
Well, I think anybody that gives anything like that flack is just full of shit.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a great record. It's great performances. It's great songs. I mean, when anybody starts ragging about stuff, I just take it all with a grain of salt and just go, I'm sorry for you. That your life is so narrow that you can't encompass this and whatever else you enjoy, might enjoy, but it sounds like if you're going to rag on that, you don't enjoy very much.
Yeah, absolutely. It still holds up all these years, I think.
Yeah.
What about your first?
Yeah, I could see people go, go Romance the Studio. It's sort of like Prince, and it's sort of, it's Machine and all that. But there are so many great songs on that album.
A lot of great songs
beyond the studio. So, the naysayers, I really don't give a crap about.
I don't either. Yeah. How about your first concert?
Well, really, first concerts I ever went to was probably with my folks. And one of the things we did every summer was we would go to the Hollywood Bowl from the time I was a little kid, because they would have Gershwin night, and it would just be a whole evening, Gershwin. And I love that. I have great memories of that. As far as they're really one of the first pop concerts I ever went to. I was an usher at the Hollywood Bowl when the Beatles played there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I actually got paid $5 to see the Beatles.
What was the intensity of the crowd? Do you remember?
Well, beyond belief. I mean, it was just one of those experiences where you really you couldn't even fathom it. Especially during that period, everybody had a camera with them, and they were all with flash bulbs.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute those guys walked on stage, it looked like daylight on the sun for the amount of flash cameras going off. And between that and the screaming, it was a pretty amazing experience, to say the least.
Yeah. Now that I think
years later, when I met McCartney, I told him about it. And he thought it was the funniest thing in the world that I was an usher there.
Yeah, my mother saw them at that same time at the Cow Palace in San Francisco.
Oh, cool.
And she got to go backstage, meet them, get their autograph because my aunt, she had connections. And my uncle, he threw the autograph away later. She's still not over it.
Oh, well, absolutely not. Not only because of the nostalgia, but because of just the pure value of that is anything with their signatures is a small gold mine.
Yeah. So I was reading.
It happens.
Oh yeah. So I was reading you attended California University, and that's where you met James Taylor.
Well, not at the school, but that was the period I met him. I was in a band. I went to Cal State Northridge, or San Fernando Valley State College, as it was called then, from 65 to the beginning of 70. And in 69, I was in a 68, 69, but in 69, I was in a band called Wolfgang, and our drummer had a friend named John Fishbeck, and John brought a friend of his who had just returned from England, one of our rehearsals, and it was James. And so that was the first time I met James, and then a few months went by, and then his record came out that he had recorded in England, and he got offered a gig at the Troubadour, and he remembered me from the rehearsals, and they needed a bass player for it, and he called Peter Asher, who was managing and producing him, and said, I found the bass player that I want to work with. And they tracked me down and hired me for the gig. And I kind of thought it would be, one show, and I'm still back in college. But that one show ended up parlaying into the rest of my life. And I never finished college. I just left and never told anybody I was leaving.
Wow. Yeah, that's taking a huge risk, but hey, it's a good risk.
Life's a risk every day you get up.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just how you deal with it.
Yeah. So after college, is that when the section came into your life?
Well, actually, the section came after like the first year and a half of James's gig. Because when we started with James in 70, the band was Russ Kunkel and Danny Korchmar, myself, and Carole King was the piano player. And James especially, but we all encouraged Carole at that point to maybe do some songs of hers in the show, because nobody knew who she was when she was on stage, but people knew who Goffin and King were if they looked at like the Locomotion and different, all the hit songs of that period. She was one of the great songwriters of that era from the time she was like 17 years old. And so she started doing some of her songs in the show, and it was a hit, and the next thing you know, she gets a record deal as a solo artist and goes in and cuts Tapestry. So all of a sudden, she's got like one of the biggest albums in the world, and it was time for her to leave the backup band situation. And I was working on a project and met Craig Durkee there, and it called Peter, and I said, I think I found the person to replace Carole. And he came in and was with James for a number of years, and it was during that period that the section formed, because we were James's backup band, and that kind of completed the four of us having Craig there. And we formed, unintentionally. Every day we would just jam and rehearse, play just for fun, during the touring, because James would come and do like a little sound check, and then he'd go off on his own. So we would just jam them, and then all of a sudden, somebody played us a tape, said, how do you like this? And we said, that's great. Who is it? And they said, it was you guys today. And Peter went and got us a record deal with Warner Brothers. So that's kind of how the section got launched. And James named the section. He said, look, you guys are the rhythm section, so why don't you just call it the section?
Yeah.
So,
for people who don't know this,
no-brainer.
yeah, for the people who don't know, you guys were kind of like the wrecking crew for Asylum Records, right?
Well, not just for Asylum. We were working on everybody's stuff. I mean, we were doing albums on Capitol and Warner Brothers and Arista. I mean, you name RCA, you name a label, and A&M. We did a lot of stuff for artists on A&M. We pretty much got packaged a lot of the time as a unit. People wanted to have us because of what they heard with James and with Jackson Browne and artists like that. But we also were all pursuing individual careers too. Because I went off and I did tons of television shows and movies and all different kinds of artists. And Russ would do his. Cooch got more into writing and producing. And then Craig had his own stuff, and then plus he was pursuing being a solo artist too. So it was a little everything. We were very different than the Wrecking Crew because, I mean, I knew all the Wrecking Crew guys, and I worked with most of them towards the end of the Wrecking Crew's dominance of the music scene. And the thing with the Wrecking Crew was they pretty much lived in the studio. They would do the albums and move on to another album. Rarely did they ever tour or go on the road with any of the artists. I mean, Hal Blaine would he would like end up in Vegas with Sinatra or something like that, and he would have a featured name on the marquee of the hotel or casino and all that. But the real difference was the section would do the people's albums, and many times they would ask us to come on the road with them. Crosby, Stills Nash, whatever, Linda Ronstadt. So we were really quite a different situation than what the Wrecking Crew was. And the thing that's interesting right now is there's a documentary film being made about the band I'm currently in, which is a different incarnation of where all that started, called The Immediate Family. And Denny Tedesco is doing the documentary, who did the Wrecking Crew movie. So
that's cool.
He's also seeing it from this different angle of what we did compared to what his dad and his people did.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm going to mention some of the great musicians you worked with. Tell me any story that comes to mind. Jackson Browne.
Well, I mean, Jackson he's a gifted, talented artist. I mean, he plays fine piano. He's a wonderful guitarist. He writes great songs. He sings. He has great production skills. And beyond that, he's a beautiful humanitarian. He does a lot of things to make this world a better place, and contributes a lot of his time and money to causes he believes in. So he's one of the good guys.
And he certainly sings it too. He's very passionate.
Oh yeah. What you see is what you get.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Linda Ronstadt.
Well, I mean, Linda's probably the finest voice of our generation. I mean, she's a articulate, smart, funny gal, but an adventurer, because you would look at the breadth of styles and things that she would find interesting, that she was fought tooth and claw at every turn to go a new direction, because the people in charge would always think she was going to lose her fan base and all that. And like, you can't go from doing pop to doing Broadway to doing, she's really one of the first doing the Great American Songbook, and she did her Spanish albums, and all of them were hugely successful because she's got a gut that you would have to listen to. When she thinks of something, you don't be flippant about it and say no. because she's got pretty good gut feelings about things. And but the heartbreak is that I mean, I still talk to her on a regular basis, and she's doing okay under the circumstances. But the sad part is just to have had her voice silenced as a singer, because there was very few that on a par with her as a vocalist, and that's heartbreaking.
I totally agree. Yes, you're right about that. A very underrated singer, Ronnie Blakely.
Yeah, God, I mean, it's been a long time since I last saw Ronnie. Back in the 70s when we worked, she was great. I mean, my memories of that are much vaguer than Linda, because I was with Linda for years and we're still together in terms of communication. But certainly when I hear the name Ronnie Blakely, it conjures up a good experience. It's not like she's relegated to ancient history in my mind. But it would be there's a lot of artists like Ronnie that I worked with over the years that every once in a while they pop up and we catch up, and it's really cool because it's really a community that really never ends. I mean, the only thing that could really end it is somebody's death. Other than that, they're always, when their name pops up, it's, a guy just wrote to me this morning about an artist I work with named Alan O'Day. And he was asking me, he sent me a song that he did a cover of and asked if it's me on the record, because Scotty Edwards and I were both credited on the album, but they didn't give track credits.
Yeah.
The only thing I remembered was he had a hit called Undercover Angel, and I know I played on that. So I told the guy, I said, no, you did a really good job on the cover, and I can't tell you if that's me or Scotty on the original. I just don't know. And that was probably 40 years ago.
Yeah. I went to a horror convention that Ronnie was at, because she was in Nightmare on Elm Street, and I don't think any fans that come to her table know that she's a singer. I told her how much I loved her voice, and she teared up. Oh man, it was great.
That's really sweet. That's really sweet. Well, it's like there's an actress, Amy Madigan, who's married to Ed Harris.
Right.
And Amy's a really fine actress. I mean, she was in Places in the Heart with Sally Field. I just saw her in a movie the other day, and she's really, when I met her, she was the lead singer in a band called Jelly, which was kind of like a punk band. And, so these people, they can have multiple careers that people are, depending on when somebody comes on board in somebody's radar, they may not know about what they did in the past at all. And, like Katie Segal, I mean, everybody thinks, married with children and blah, 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 and all her acting stuff. But, I mean, she was one of the harlots with Bette Midler, and she's had her own recording career, and she's a really good singer. I've done recordings with her. So you just never know. So it's kind of fun when you can, maybe these people, they feel that part of their career is long over, and then somebody comes up and says, man, I love your singing. It's sweet. Nice.
It is. How about Rod Stewart?
Well, Rod, I'm going to do a whole thing about Rod right now, because I started this YouTube channel.
Yes, I've seen it.
And I just heard from some people that are doing a thing about Rod's Atlantic Crossing album. And I was one of the bass players on it, and they were asking me about the song Sailing, and they say, according to our records, you played on it. So I'm trying to suss out if I actually did or not. If I did, I'll go ahead and play along with it and post that on my page. I just want to be sure, because there was, David Hood and Bob Glove, I think, were also on that album. So it gets hard. This is what pisses me off. I just wish they would take one extra second when they did credits on albums and have all the tracks numbered, and then put numbers next to guys' names as to who was on which track. Because it's hard to do the forensics, but I did a few things for Rod on his Great American Songbook albums, and a few years back we did a record with him, and it was all covers of 80s songs like Doobie Brothers and different people like that. And Rod's great, man. The thing that's fun is, first off, early on he created an image, and he's lived that image his whole life. He's not one of these guys that's gone from this to that to this and that. Stylistically, like when he started doing the American Songbook stuff, that was a stylistic change, but he's still got his flair and his panache that he brings to it. But whenever I've been around him, he's an absolutely sweethearted guy. I really, really like Rod. We got on great.
He seems like a good guy, yeah. You played on the Doors' Full Circle album. That was after Jim had died, of course. Were they...
I think it was the album right after he had passed.
Yeah, was there a lot of tension between them?
Not that I could see. I used to see the Doors play with Jim back in the 60s in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got in the studio, they were real professional about what they did. John and Robbie and God, they're suddenly
Ray
here.
Ray Manzarek.
Ray,
yeah.
They've been together for so long that they just kind of hunkered down. For them it was a confusing period, just because they were a band and they wanted to keep being a band, but they had lost their lead singer image of it. So it was a little bit more of a challenge probably for them. But I enjoyed it a lot. Just that, I'm sitting there with a bunch of guys I've seen playing, and they were a huge act on the scene. And I was at this point, it's never changed for me. I've always been fanboy.
Mm-hmm.
If I go in the studio, the thing is, I've gotten to work with almost all the people I ever dreamed of, from Joe Cocker to Streisand to sort of you name it, Willie Nelson, all these people. Whenever I walk in the studio, I know we're on an equal playing field when we're in the studio together. And but I do find myself just kind of sitting there, like I put my headphones on and Joe Cocker sings one note, and you kind of go, that's fucking Joe Cocker, man. And I still look at Little Help from My Friends as one of the best pieces of production recording I've ever heard. It's still one of my absolute favorites.
Mm-hmm. It's a masterpiece.
So they have meaning to me beyond just that they're an artist. They've had effects on my life, and that goes for like when I worked with Andy Williams and people of that genre.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm really appreciative of people's talents, and it's really exciting sometimes to find yourself in a situation when you look over. When I worked with B.B. King, I was sitting 2 feet from B.B. doing the album, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm talking to him, and I'm thinking, that's fucking B.B. King. Freaking out, intensely freaking out deep down inside of me, so I wouldn't show it. And he was a beautiful cat. We had so much fun playing together and stuff. So, that's kind of where it's at.
How about Warren Zevon?
Well, Warren's a whole other discussion, too. This was a unique, quirky, fascinating guy who was really talented and really kind of, it's sort of like a musical David Lynch.
Yeah.
Bringing all this weird kind of, he could write the most out berserko song, and then the next song he brings in, it rips your heart out. It's so beautifully tender and stuff. And it just was another heartbreak, when a guy like that, with all his talent and what he had going for him, ends up, getting cancer and can't survive it. It's a huge loss to me, to humankind, when you lose people like that, because they're major contributors to us on a daily basis. And losing them is heartbreaking, where I can think of a lot of people, especially in the political arena, that I would not give a rat's ass if they died, and I would actually celebrate it.
Oh, yeah.
but losing and all the musicians that I've known, the Jeff Porcaros and Carlos Vegas and Don Grolnick and Michael Breckers and all these people that are gone now. It's really tragic. Fogelberg, all these people. That's the tough one, because they're such positive contributors to the makeup of society. It's tough.
Yeah, or Laura Branigan.
Yeah, same thing. You know, I mean, she was so young when she died. You know, and she was really a sweetheart. You know, when we did her album with Gloria and all that, she was just an absolute delight. The only thing that was weird on that was, I mean, here she's got an album, has a massive hit on it, and does incredibly huge. And then when she did her next project, she changed producer, studio, band, everything, and her career kind of disappeared. You know, I don't know who she talked to. It might have been like getting a boyfriend who said, "Oh, you know, we can do it ourselves" or something. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what happened, but it's always kind of sad to me when you have something that the chemistry comes together so beautifully and ends up with like a hit project, and then you hear they're back in the studio with a totally different team, and they just don't. They get fed the kind of the idea that it's all them. And they really have a vision of what everybody contributes to their stuff.
I think if she were alive today, she'd be headlining those 80s nostalgia concerts to a T. You know, she
would be great for that, because she had a great voice and she's good looking. I mean, she kind of, it was sad when her career didn't stay on the same trajectory that it was on with that album. But everybody's different. Everybody has their own spin on things, and you just move on. I don't try to control things I have no control over.
Of course.
And that's the kind of stuff. When I get called to do a record or a tour, I go in and do the very best I can, and then I'm done with it. I move on. You know, it's one of those situations that. My involvement is a very limited involvement. I'm the bass player, and I try to bring as much as I can to the table. But at the end of the day, when I see decisions being made that I think are not necessarily beneficial to the artist, I'm really not in a position to make those, help those decisions being made.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I get asked for my advice, but generally, it's not taken.
Yeah.
Which is fine, it's their careers, not mine. I was just happy to be called to do the album, kind of thing.
Yeah, and of course we got to talk about Phil Collins.
Yeah, I mean, Phil's amazing. I mean, I met Phil doing a Lee Ritenour album back in around '80, and he knew who I was and I knew who he was, but we had never worked together before, and he asked me if I could work. He had just recorded, I think he'd been finishing up Face Value, and asked me if I could tour with him. I think that would have been '81. And I was committed to a James Taylor tour, and I said, "No, I can't do it, man, because I'm already booked." But I said, I'd love to do something with you, so if down the road you want to work again, just please call me. And that's when they called me and booked me for '84 to do No Jacket, and then we spent the '85 on the road, touring that. And then I was with him in '90 doing the Good Serious, and then we parted ways at that point because of other things going on. And then he called me back again in 2000 and asked if I'd come back and do the first Final Farewell tour, and then whatever he's done since then, we've been back together on. We just finished 2.5 years on the road.
Yeah. It's good to see.
It's hard. The thing that's hard is him not playing drums. Because that is first and foremost what he loved the most and what he does so well. But he's just had some really bad surgeries that have left him, unable to be the drummer he wants to be. I mean, he can sit behind a kit and play, but it's not what he once was, and his legacy is too deep to not come out and be as great as he was. So I think it's been he's kind of, when we're touring, he's passed the drumsticks on to his son Nicholas.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely killing it. You know, Nick was a really good drummer when he was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he got the gig with Phil because it's his dad. He really earned that seat, and he played the shit out of it. He's really good.
Yeah, he was like the Beatles of the 80s, man. Everything he touched turned to gold. You know, I don't think anyone else had a career quite like he did, you know, because he had solo, he had band, he was doing movies, TV show appearances. I mean, he was everywhere. He was like one of the kings of the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, in a way that was one of the things, like, people started ragging on him just because he was so multi-talented and multitasking that he was everywhere, and then people would start, you know, their attention span is pretty shit, and so they would start to get burned out and say, oh, God, you know, the press, English press especially, was incredibly cruel to him. I mean, he's like one of the biggest artists they've ever had, and they were just, like, berating him for looking like he did, saying he's like the Cabbage Patch Kid of rock, and all this really bullshit, you know, like they've ever done anything in their life other than write shitty reviews.
Yeah.
But Phil's a remarkable person, and he's also one of the most caring artists I've ever worked with from the standpoint we would dedicate a lot of time to preparation for tours and with rehearsals and production rehearsals, because his attitude always was the first audience deserves as good a show as the last audience. Where so many bands go on the road and they spend the first 2 weeks of their tour dialing their show in. So those audiences aren't necessarily getting the best show. But by the time we would hit the circuit with Phil, we would have rehearsed the show, you know, 50 times and changed things around. We would have people come to our rehearsals and sit and talk with them afterwards and say, you know, what worked for you, what maybe sing, and we would really dial the show in to make this thing really as good as it could possibly be. And not many artists have that kind of a dedication to their audience to do that. Phil's pretty special on that level.
Mm-hmm. And he did a lot of hilarious music videos. I remember when you guys did the video for Something Happened on the Way to Heaven, right there near the end, the dog pees on your leg.
And the thing that was great about that was, first off, that was a really famous English actor dog.
Mm-hmm.
He had been in movies and stuff, really super trained. But what they did, it was a female dog.
Mm-hmm.
So when they shot that shot, they had like a little garden sprayer thing that they covered in fur to look like a dick, and they had some fishing wire hooked to its back leg. The dog's name is Pippin, and so the trainer had, you know, called Pippin over next to my foot. Then on a camera site, they lifted the dog's leg up with the fishing wire, and then they had snaked the garden sprayer under it and were squirting water all over my foot. I mean, it turned into a big deal shot. But the funniest thing was I was on a flight from L.A. to New York, and I sat down on the plane, and I'm sitting next to an older gentleman who's like really in his Armani suit, very stylish, you know, kind of George Hamilton or something like that. And he was just, you know, taking care of business on the flight, you know, with his books and all the stuff out that he was writing. And, you know, 5 hours later, we're getting off the plane, and as we're getting out of our seats, he leans over and he goes, "Did that dog really pee on you?" I looked at him and I said, "We've been sitting here 5 hours, and now you're asking me about the dog peeing on me."
Yeah. Oh, my God, that's
awesome. I got
awesome.
a lot of mileage out of that, the same way poor Arnold McCuller ended up looking like he stepped in dog shit, you know, because he got this look on his face and look on his shoe, and there was a big, you know, brown thing on his foot. The thing with Phil's videos is, and Genesis, that was something they really excelled in. All of them. One of my favorites was when we did Billy Don't Lose That Number. We filmed most of that in Australia. We had our Western scene and our Road Warrior scene, and he had his David Lee Roth stuff and the homage to the Cars and the Police, and they put a lot. Jim Yukich and Paul Flattery were really a good team. Paul would produce the stuff, and Jim would direct all the videos, and they did just a great job. And Phil really took all the video stuff to heart. Really loved doing that. We all loved being involved in them too. Like the Take Me Home video, we filmed all over the world, so we had pieces of it from everywhere because we were touring all over the world. So it was the longest video to assemble because we were waiting for to hit all these different countries and get out and film in them. But the one, Land of Confusion, the Genesis one, that spinning image made the puppets for the guys.
Yeah.
Great, and then everybody and Michael Jackson. I mean, they're just brilliant little films. So it's pretty cool that they really dedicated that energy into that form of the art, I think.
Yeah, they are. They're all brilliant. They all hold up to those videos.
Yeah.
Do you have a good story about working with Dolly Parton on Rhinestone?
Well, I'll tell you, Dolly. I've known Dolly a long time, and she called me and asked me if I would, be in the movie. She thought it would be fun, which it was. I mean, it's one of these movies that could have actually been a whole lot better.
Of course.
Phil Robinson wrote the original setup for the movie, the original script, I believe. And he did Field of Dreams. He wrote and directed Field of Dreams. The issue that came into play was Stallone, in his contract, had rights of last rewrite. Mm-hmm. He started changing everything, and Phil ended up bailing on the movie. He just couldn't take it anymore. And I'm trying to remember his name right now, who directed it.
Bob Clark.
Yeah, Bob Clark. I mean, Bob Clark did A Christmas Story, which is one of the sweetest Christmas movies ever, and an absolute staple in the holidays, just as much as White Christmas at this point. Mm-hmm. And the real hard part was just, Stallone is one of those guys that, you just kind of go whatever. So it ended up being less of a movie than it actually had potential to be, but it was fun, being involved in it. Yeah, and Dolly is like I said, is a really dear friend. I would drive her to the studio every day, and I'd pick her up on my way through Hollywood, and we'd go and bring her home, and because she had an apartment out here when she was working out here. Mm-hmm. But the thing that was also so telling was, Dolly's the kind of person that she knew the names of every grip, every extra, everybody involved in the thing. She would eat lunch with everybody, in the common area where, like, Sly would show up, go to his trailer, and he wouldn't come out until it was time for him to work, and he didn't really connect with people. It's a whole different attitude, and this, with that project, it became real obvious, who the hang was and who the not hang was. But the funny part of that whole movie was when it came out, it was on every airplane, and I was flying a lot at that point, and it seemed like every flight I got on, there's Rhinestone is being watched, and I was just going, oh, fuck. Sitting there with a pillowcase over my head, because it was hard to hide.
Yeah, Stallone said in an interview years later, he said, if you watch that movie now, you would think to yourselves that we all thought to ourselves, hey, let's make a movie that will ruin our career.
Exactly. I mean, Richard Farnsworth was in it, who I absolutely love. Yeah. He was such a fine actor and
great actor.
A great character actor. So I mean, I got to meet him, and there was some real fun moments. I mean, there was a guy named Mousy Garner.
Oh yeah.
And Mousy was a member of the Spike Jones band, and I had an album called Dinner Music for People Who Aren't Very Hungry at Spike Jones, and I dug the album up and brought it down there, and I asked Mousy to sign it. He he said, "You've got this record? Oh my God!" And it's like, so I mean, no matter what a circumstance, it's always kind of you try to glean positives out of them, and for the most part, it was a positive thing. I just wish it had been a better movie. It was, fairly cheesy, but it was fun to hang out. And Rod Liefman, I was always a fan of Rod Liefman's work since Where's Papa and all those kind of movies.
Great actor.
The Hang was great. The Hang was just fine. So, and it's history. There it is. Anytime anybody wants to whip it up, it'll show up.
Yeah. So you have a YouTube channel. I've been watching your videos. They're great. So what made you decide that you were going to make a YouTube channel?
Well, I didn't think about doing a YouTube channel. I posted a couple of videos, and they somehow morphed into a channel. Mm-hmm. But the whole thing was, first off, with the advent of this pandemic, I had an incredibly busy work year ahead of me that turned into zero.
Yeah.
Instantly, like so many other people. I had a bunch of projects in Europe that were all canceled or indefinitely postponed. Session work in LA that was all shut down because studios were closed up. So I'm just sitting around the house. I mean, we're busy with our band, the immediate family, so we discovered acapella, and so we've been doing videos. And our first single just came out a week ago, and it's getting really great response and airplay. And we have a great video on that. But when the pandemic started, one of the things that went through my mind was there's a lot of times over the years where bass players especially have written to me and said, "Oh man, we saw you guys in like Sao Paulo or something, and we were in like a 100,000 seat soccer stadium, and or we saw you in these arenas, and as great as our sound guy is, they said it was hard sometimes to hear all the subtleties of your playing because of the venue." Mm-hmm. And so I thought I had a board mix of the tour we had just finished from Adelaide, Australia, and I thought I'll just pick the whole show in order, do a song a day. And mm-hmm. what I was doing was playing the board mix through a little Bose speaker off my computer, and I EQ'd the bass pretty much out of it, and then had an amp sitting next to me, and what I would do is play the song, but I would put the bass part on top of the track rather than buried in the track, so that people could actually hear all the nuances and stuff. And then, and I told some stories about things, not really with no plan or anything. And I started getting all these responses from people, and a lot of them weren't bass players. And by the time I got, halfway through the Phil's show, I mean, people were writing to me, sending me pictures of their families eating dinner, watching the videos on TV, and all kinds of stuff. And really, they were saying, this is really helping during this dark period to have, something like this to look forward to. So I just dug my heels in, and I just kept at it. And I think yesterday was my 137th video in a row.
Wow.
And so I'm doing all kinds of different songs, because I finished up Phil, and then I still got a few Phil songs I'm going to do, and I've got more Toto songs, and then I've gotten into all kinds of other artists, from Neil Sedaka to Barbara Streisand. Yesterday I did Billy Thorpe's Children of the Sun, and today I'm going to do Marty Stewart and his Hillbilly song that we did. So I'm trying to look at all different kinds of things, just to have varieties. And there's people that write on and say, "We don't even care if you play, just tell us the stories." And other people say, "Oh man, I love your playing." And then there's a guy, I don't know where he's from, Italy or Spain or someplace, who every day he posts it on Facebook. He transcribes all my bass parts from the previous posts I put up. And they're exquisite. He's an absolutely gifted copyist. And now I'm talking to Steve Bailey, who's the head of the bass department at Berkeley, and he's talking to this guy about maybe when I hit like 200 of let's make it a book of all these bass parts that bass players could then get, and then I can contribute stories to all the songs and stuff, and make, like a coffee table book. So, I mean, it's like all these weird things that go on. And the other day, I just started a thing that's separate from the YouTube channel, and I'm calling it Lee's Clubhouse, and I'm going to do live streaming on that. There's 2 levels you can come in, because it's going to be a fee, but I mean, it's like $10 a month to come in. I'm going to be doing these live feeds and answering questions, and there's going to be swag and stuff. And then there's an elite level where people come in and we can do like a 10 or 15 minutes one-on-one Skype call. If they have questions or they have songs they want me to listen to and give them some ideas and stuff. So, I mean, there's at this point, there's no telling when the situation we are in right now is going to be over. I think it's going to be a long haul, especially with the amount of irresponsibility taking place by people. It's not, I mean, where you look at Europe and stuff, and their numbers have gone dramatically down because they took the masks and the distancing very seriously, where here it suddenly turned into politics and you're infringing on my rights, and our numbers are higher than any place else in the world, and now we're being blocked from going anywhere because we're being so stupid. So it could be a couple of years before we're really ever doing gigs again, other than virtual gigs. So, it's necessary to kind of just, if you want to remain viable and feel like you're still participating in this all, you have to figure out some other thing. And our band, The Immediate Family's now got a YouTube channel, and we're loading content into that. We just did a live stream concert the other night, and we're going to do another one pretty soon. And it's a whole new ball game. And if we're going to survive it, it's going to take some real diligence, because so many of the venues that you would have played in the past are shutting down because they can't afford to maintain the properties. And they're even talking about Cirque du Soleil's declaring bankruptcy now.
Yeah, it's insane.
So, I mean, it's the worst time. I'm 73, and this is the worst time I've seen in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, my parents could look back at the Depression, and there's a certain commonality between what this is turning into and that, but it's just this being in the unknown. So I'm just trying to figure out all kinds of things to do just to, stay active and stay viable in all of this. I'd hate to think that at this point I'll never play live again, because this could go on for the rest of my life. I mean, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And I know people that have died. So I mean, when people start saying this is a hoax, I go, yeah, why don't you go tell the family at the funeral it's a hoax? And I have on every one of my videos, I do a shout out at the end to the responders that are, doctors, nurses, grocers, delivery people, all these people, and doctors, especially, and nurses, always respond thanking me for these, and say these people who say this is nonsense should spend a day with us in the hospital and see what this is really all about. This is not some kind of a political joke like the piece of fuck in the White House.
Yeah.
Started out, that this is a Democratic hoax to make me look bad and all. I mean, he just has to take his first breath of the day and he looks bad.
Yeah.
So we're months and months behind the rest of the world, and then the propaganda machine that's in place, making this all into some kind of a weird, partisan joke, and it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking, because while all this bullshit's going on, there's people dying, and all the industries shutting down, all the people suffering and hurting for this, and there's no end in sight. A lot of people might have just enough to have been able to hang on for a couple of months, where most people could only had a few days worth of savings or something. But if this turns into a couple of years before we're really possibly back to any normalcy, because it's going to take a long time to develop a vaccine. Fast tracking, this stuff doesn't mean it's going to be right or it's going to be safe or it's going to work or anything like that. So we're entering into a really unknown period in our history, and so for me, it just felt like something to do, and it's really turned out for a lot of people, unbeknownst to me, like an oasis in their days to come watch these videos, and I sort of feel like I've turned into Mr. Rogers. I sit there and I tell them, stories and play along with songs and stuff, and it gives me something to do. And then when I just announced this Clubhouse idea, then a bunch of guys started attacking me. Said, we knew it was going to come to this. You're just using us to, and I'm thinking, I'm not stopping my YouTube channel. That's going to go on every day. This is just another thing I'm going to do during my day. And not this, but I got viciously attacked for it by people that have been enjoying 3 months of my labor every day for free. And suddenly they don't even read, or listen to what I'm saying. Nothing's changing here. I'm just adding something. And if you feel like coming over there, it'll be different. It'll be something else for us to do and more interactive, where maybe people can ask me questions in real time and I'll answer them right there rather than writing, into it's the world's fucking nuts. Yeah. It's just it's really sad, heartbreaking. And then to add on top of that, the Black Lives Matter movement, which is absolutely, ridiculous that this is still a discussion at this time in our history. But nothing ever, there's been changes in things, but at such slow paces. I just found out yesterday that I did not know that Mississippi was the last state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment that Lincoln put up. And they signed it in 1995 begrudgingly. Mm-hmm. They waited like 100 years to sign it. This is insane. So, it's important that all these, the protests are taking place. To me, I think it's absolutely imperative to make change, but it's so tragic that this has all come at a time when we're dealing with this terrible disease, where the worst thing that we could be doing is gathering in numbers. So this is really just like, I'm waiting to see, a gathering and then suddenly a locust infestation. It's like, how much more shit can go on.
It's a shit show for sure, but I think you're doing a great thing with those videos and stuff. I'm enjoying them. I like that one you posted a couple weeks ago where you said that they took your video down for copyright music.
Oh, yeah. That's been a battle because almost everything I've posted is copyright protected.
Yeah.
Even stuff that I've played on every single track, but the other day I was going to put up It's Raining Men, and that got yanked. And so the other day, Paul Schaefer wrote to me, and he said, give me a call, let's see what we can do about it, because he's one of he and Paul Chabar wrote the song. So he's going to try to see if he can get it cleared so that I can put the post up about it.
Yeah. I put songs in the background of my... Yeah, I put songs in the background of my podcast when I first started 3 years ago, and I never got them yanked, but I got some warnings, and so I took all the music out, because I didn't want to deal with that shit. It's crazy. Have you ever?
The first one I got nailed on was Your Smiling Face, James Taylor. And I'm thinking, I was with James when he wrote it. I played on it. I toured it, and I can't post it. Mm-hmm. Playing along with it. It was, but what I finally had to do was go through all the YouTube stuff and find a performance of it that we did in '78. If it's coming off of a performance, it's okay. If it's coming off of the record, it's not okay, even though it sounds almost identical. Mm-hmm. It's just, there's so many rules, and you think under these circumstances, it would be beneficial really good at shooting itself in the foot.
Yeah, I agree.
So you just kind of go, okay, well, whatever. I'll figure a way around it. And if I can't put that up, I'll put something else. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at a bunch of Toto songs that I want to do. Like I said, today I'm going to do Marty Stewart, and tomorrow I'm going to probably do Susie Boggess, or do a little country run, and then do Reba and some Clint Black, and I've got hundreds of country records. So, the material's all out there. The hard part for me is picking a song, relearning it that day, because some of these songs I haven't played in 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm trying to do a performance that gives, credit to it, and rather than reinventing the whole thing just to get through it. And then I go through All Music or Discog or any of those sites trying to get as much information on it as I can, so I can credit as many people who are involved on it as I can. So it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm putting in hours a day to do these videos, and I, and I've never charged for it. And then all of a sudden, as soon as I start something else up for $10 a month, and all of a sudden I look at it as like a capitalist swine. I'm like a Getty or a Rockefeller.
Yeah.
Are you joking? Jesus, give me a break. You spend more than that a day at Starbucks.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about writing a memoir?
50 years of hard work is meaningless to them. Music's supposed to be free.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about writing a memoir?
No, I don't have any desire to do that. I mean, in a way, this has sort of turned into like an audio version of that.
Yeah.
I've had people say they should archive all of these things and put them in the, in the Library of Congress.
Make a 4-hour video.
So much information. But I've seen a million, autobiographies of everybody from Phil to Luke III to Ronstadt to Crosby, and that just doesn't appeal to me at all. But I'm doing a book right now, and it's going to be a coffee table book, and it's all pictures of people giving me the finger. and I hooked up with a guy who's really good at doing books, and he's been working on the layout, how to really make this cohesive, because he does art books, and it'll be a lot of stories pertaining to specific pictures, like because there's I gave him a hard drive. I organized pictures as best I could, and I gave him a hard drive with 11,000 pictures I've taken of people flipping me off. And now we're finding the best of all of it, and then breaking it down into, people with beards, smiles, frowns, and all kinds of stuff. Celebrities, athletes, musicians, the man on the street, children. And that's what I'm focusing on right now. And I'm going to probably start a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter page to finance it, because it's going to cost a chunk of dough to do this. But I've had people for years going, if you ever do your book, I'm so in on it. And then whoever contributes to that, there'll be different levels of that, where they'll get, personalized autograph copies and, and all that stuff. So hopefully in the next couple of months, we might be able to actually have that out. And in that clubhouse that I've just formed, there will be a virtual store there too. And the people I got that have helped me set that up said, look at, you can do T-shirts and mugs, with your image on them and all that. And I've got people writing in going, is there going to be any swag? And the beauty of this is all you do is supply the imagery, and nothing gets made until there's an order. So it's not like I'm going to have a garage with 400 boxes of T-shirts sitting around. Nothing gets made, so there's no waste. Somebody orders a mug, they just say, I want a black one, a white one, or whatever, and then the picture's put on it, and it's shipped to them. So, it's just all these things to me are just kind of fun things. And when I was in college, I was an illustrator. I recently posted a bunch of my drawings on Facebook. I'm kicked off Facebook for another month right now. But I posted a bunch of my pictures, and people go, "These are unbelievable. God, I would hang that in my studio if I could get it." So the guy who's doing my book, one of the things he does is he does real high-end copying of pictures, digitizing them. So I'm going to unframe a bunch of my drawings and take them over to his place, and we're going to do that, and then that'll be available if somebody wants a poster of something. We'll just have it printed and send it to them. So I'm looking at all kinds of options. Not so much that any of it's going to be this giant, business money-making scene. Anything helps. At this point, since there's zero, coming in. But more than anything, it's just I figure at this point, there's a finite, even if I stay really healthy, there's a finite amount of days left on that calendar as compared to when I was 26 and touring and recording. So at this point, that's why I do interviews all the time. I've got another one this afternoon, and I'm doing a thing for the Grammy Museum tomorrow, and doing all these different things because I figure this is the time to lay out legacy and pass on whatever information you've earned and learned over the years. And then if people can have, an interaction with you and they can walk away with, some swag, because I remember doing a gig with James many years ago, and the whole front row showed up, and they had matching T-shirts that said Lee Sklar Fan Club, and this was like in the 70s.
Yeah.
They had all committed to making shirts, so I figure, what the hell? Why not? And like with the finger book, I'm going to have a chunk of that. There's a couple of charities I'm real involved with. One of them is an elephant sanctuary in Tennessee that's remarkable. Mm-hmm. And so I'll have a percentage of all this shit go to the charities. So, it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
One quick question. Do you have a title for that finger book?
Our working title is They Like Me.
That's a good title.
At first I was going to call it So Sue Me, because people would say, well, don't you have releases from everybody? I'm sitting on an airplane, and I get those compartments all flip me off. I'm not carrying a ream of things, but I've talked to lawyers, and they said, look, if you go up to somebody and say, can I take your picture, and they pose for you, they've given you permission. It's not like you're sitting with a telephoto lens 3 blocks away, paparazzi time.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried. And then especially if any of it's going to charity, nobody wants to be the dick that's going to cause trouble. And it's only one picture out of potentially, who knows, maybe 1,000 or 1,500 or, as many pictures as are going to be in this. So we'll see. I'm not worried about that, but that's kind of the working title right now. It's almost like when Sally Field won the Academy Award. She stood there and goes, "They really like me. They really like me." So the guy I'm working with, he thought that they like me. And every one of them people giving me the finger. So it was a kind of a diametrically opposed fun part to that.
Oh, that's going to be great. I'm going to buy a copy when it comes out, definitely. Well, Lee, I thank you so much for coming on today. I hope after this clusterfuck is over, you get back on the road. But in the meantime, I'll continue to watch your videos.
Well, just you get all hillbilly today because I'll be Marty Stewarting it up.
Marty Stewarting it up. All right, Lee, thank you so much, and have a great day, and enjoy playing your music.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure talking to you, too. Anytime, just give me a shout.
Absolutely. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Leland Sklar. Ain't he a cool dude? He is so damn hilarious. That was great. He had great stories about playing with musicians and all that stuff. I enjoyed talking to him. He was really great. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes.